I have a small confession to make, which also leads me to my first question. And I'm following your career for about 14 years now.
Wow.
I heard about In the Heights in 2007. I'm a Broadway geek, I'm a musical theater geek.
Amazing.
And I'm just, interested in all things Broadway. And I was on a Broadway discussion board and I read about In the Heights and I heard some promotional snippets. It wasn't on Broadway, still on off-Broadway. And I was mind blown because this combination of hip hop, because I love hip hop as well as you, I love Kendrick Lamar and Jay-Z and all that stuff. And seeing those things combined means everything to me. And then seeing you, writing songs for Disney like Moana, directing Tick Tick Boom. It's amazing even for me looking back in 14 years, how it feels for you when you wake up in the morning and think, okay, I'm here now. What have I done the last 14 years? How it feels to you when you look back?
Well, I don't always look back 14 years. No, but it's, I'm really proud. Thank you for mentioning early in the Heights days. It's funny, when you mentioned that time, I think about how I was basically being a YouTube influencer before that existed, because I was so nervous that the audience that I thought would appreciate In the Heights wouldn't come to see it, because there wasn't hip hop in musicals, and there wasn't Latin music in musicals, so I would make my own YouTube videos where I'm rapping on the subway and saying like, this show is really good, please come see our show. Those were not paid for by our marketing division. Those were me with my Kodak Easy Share and my friends, just trying to get beyond the theater echo chamber. And so, I look back and I'm really proud. I'm really proud of all of it.
Amazing. And I already said it, Hamilton is such a big phenomenon, and it was surprising for me that you brought it to Disney Plus for everyone to see, despite a prejudice that if you release a show on DVD or on a streaming service, nobody wants to see the show live. So how did this decision come about?
Well, I think that myth has been in place for a long time, and I've always been skeptical of it. I watched as the Rent movie gave the Rent Broadway production another 3 years of long life. I watched it, with Chicago, and then the other thing was I was aware, even when we were in Hamilton, that it was a tough ticket. So the first thing we did obviously was prioritize students who would benefit from the 2.5 hours of history class. The semester of history class we cover in about 2.5 hours. So we created the EduHam educational initiative, like even before we came to Broadway. But then it also became very clear to Jeffrey Seller, our producer, and Tommy and I, like, every person in this cast is going to go on and have like a major career, so we should film everyone while they're still in the same place at the same time. And we filmed that production ourselves. I mean, that was essentially an independent movie that got picked up by Disney. But we filmed it ourselves the week before I left the show. And we filmed three performances and then pickups and close-ups on our day off, on our Monday off, in between. And then we just sort of sat on it. And the other thing that's amazing about it is Tommy had no deadline to edit it. So every year he would go, edit it a little bit, go away, come back and say, okay, I think I want to do this now. And so it has the benefit of just sort of our growth as artists, in terms of Tommy learning more about film and becoming an even better filmmaker. And so I'm really proud of that. And I'm really proud that, and again, when people were making a fuss and getting upset with us, it's so hard to get a ticket, I would say, we filmed it. You'll see it. Anyway. I promise you will see us doing the show. And so I'm really glad the world has that now.
Amazing. And well, now Hamilton finally premiered in Hamburg, so for the first time in a non-English language. Congratulations. And how does it feel? What did you feel last night in the Operettenhaus?
Oh, I was so thrilled. First of all, you have to understand, for me, it is the first time I am seeing a production of Hamilton and I don't know all the words. Obviously, I supervise the translation, the incredible translation by Kevin and Sarah, but It was a very thrilling experience. And there's also a part of me that has the muscle memory of playing Hamilton for a year and a half. So every time Benet would go into a section that I know is hard, I go, oh, I bet this is harder in German. So my stomach would tighten for him, and then he would, the last verse of My Shot, the first verse of Yorktown, the rebuttal in We Know, those are all hard. I know firsthand. But I also had the benefit of seeing all of these wonderful performers and their auditions in 2020. This cast has been waiting for 2.5 years for an audience. And I'm so grateful they stuck with us because they were cast 2.5 years ago. No one would be mad if they moved on to another gig, but they stayed with us, and it was all worth it last night.
Amazing. So many people say Hamilton hits differently in German, and I can confirm that. It's a different Hamilton. You can see that. What makes the German production so special for you?
The first part of the answer to that question is personal, which is my wife is half Austrian, and we have family members who don't speak English, and it was really their first time seeing Hamilton last night and truly getting it, because they'd heard the songs and stuff, but again, it's like, oh, that's Vanessa's husband's show. I'm sure it's fine, and watching them go like, holy shit. Because they really were able to capture all of these nuances you don't get when it's not your native language, was really just wonderful on a personal level. On another level, it confirms for me that there's something in the show that is beyond the specifics of what it's about that is resonating with people. There's the specifics that this takes place in the American colonies as they become the proto-United States of America at the end of the 18th century. But that's not what the show's really about. What the show is really about is what are we meant to do with our time alive, and hearing crying around me and hearing laughs in the same places last night, hearing laughs in new places because our King George is just an assassin. He gets 12 new laughs that never existed before. It was really thrilling.
I think the biggest difference in Hamburg is, of course, the German translation. The translation process took 3 years during a worldwide pandemic, and you worked together with Sarah Finale and Kevin Schröder from Germany, who did an amazing job. How did you work together on 2 different continents in these difficult times?
Yeah, a lot of the credit, our middleman was an incredible young man named Kurt Crowley, who was the associate conductor for the original Broadway company. He essentially learned German to basically help facilitate this for us. And every 3 months he would call me and say, they've got 5 new songs done. And we would get on a Zoom, and then me, Alex Lacamoire, our original music director, and Kurt would have our 3-column Zooms. The 3 columns being my original lyrics, the German translation, and then the literal back translation of what the German, and the directive I sort of said to Kevin and Sarah at the beginning was, I don't mind you using your own metaphors. I really want to maintain the rhyme schemes whenever possible. And it needs to be playable and human, because being fluent in Spanish, I have seen Spanish translations where I was like, that's technically a translation, but no human would ever put those words in that order. It's being tortured to sort of fit, the lips on screen or what have you. And so we went line by line. Every time there was a batch of new songs, we would go through them, meet for a couple of hours, and there was always back and forth. And some of the things I was marveling at watching the show last night are just really elegant solutions. I remember we had a really hard time with Washington on your side. That's such an idiom. To have someone on your side, it's like, well, to be beside you in German does not mean the same thing as on your side. And also the other meaning of Washington being not just a person, but an establishment, by having political power on your side. And I couldn't remember how we'd solved it while I was watching the show last night. Because remember, we finished these translations 2 years ago. And so when they started singing Washington Hand in Hand, I was like, oh, that's so smart. It's such an elegant, again, you have 3 syllables. And that's some of the beautiful, elegant work that Sarah and Kevin have done.
And you said it, the rhymes. I love that Hamilton amazes through all those hip-hop references, musical references. I love the last 5 years one especially.
Yes, so do I.
If you translate that, most of them gets lost. So what was your approach here in the German version?
Yeah, the approach becomes, because I always thought of those as Easter eggs. It can't just be an Easter egg for the sake of, this is not a referential musical. I'm actually pretty allergic to meta musicals. I don't love musicals. They're like, isn't it hilarious that we're singing and dancing? I'm like, stop apologizing and just tell us the story you want to tell us. So I always thought of those Easter eggs as very sort of hidden in, and if they work for continuing the storytelling, great. So it really always, story wins kind of every time, and emotional truth wins every time. One of the most beautiful adaptations that is not a literal translation. In my version, in English, it's I imagine death so much it feels more like a memory. In the translation, it is I feel death writing between the lines of my diary. That's stunning. I wish I'd thought of it. So I was always thrilled when they'd find sort of an alternate metaphor that gets at the same emotional truth.
Okay. Well, I loved Hamilton in German, but I also know there are many people out there who are skeptical about whether the show works as good as in London or in New York. What would you say to calm down anxious German Hamilton fans out there? What would you say to convince them?
I would say you have to see it to believe it, because it works. And I've watched it in action, and I watch that audience who didn't want to leave last night. It was really interesting. I was talking to our publicity department here, and he said, there is one consistent criticism we're getting is we don't let them clap long enough for the cast. I'll take that as a criticism any day, and it's been remarkable to sort of hear the responses from the German audience.
Amazing.
You got to see it.
Yeah, and looking into the future to your upcoming projects, such as The Little Mermaid, any thoughts on that you can reveal for us? David Diggs is casted as Sebastian. Can we expect any rap parts? Please say yes.
Yeah. No, there's not. I didn't. No, Sebastian is not like suddenly a rapper. Okay. The thing you have to understand about Little Mermaid is I like the original more than anybody. So we replace any song that you love in Little Mermaid, it's in there. What Alan and I tried to do was find other moments to musicalize that aren't in that original version, which again, the original Little Mermaid's short, it's like 88 minutes. So we looked for other moments to musicalize. We were able to write something really wonderful for Hallie. We were able to write a really lovely moment for Awkwafina and David. And I'm trying to think what else. A lovely moment for Prince Eric. So yeah, I'm really proud of what we did, and it was really interesting because I was intimidated because it's Alan Menken, and I'm looking at your sweater, like, if you know, you know, like what a genius he is. But once we got started and through the initial awkwardness of, oh my God, I'm working on my childhood dream, I knew the characters really well. No one's seen that movie more times than me. So it was a joy to get to write like sort of new lyrics for those characters that have lived in my blood cells for so long.
I'm looking forward to this movie because I was at D23 Expo just a few weeks ago, and I saw
when they played the
whole scene,
world, yeah.
And she's stunning. So I'm very looking forward to it. I love Chloe Exali. I love the last album, and seeing her singing the lungs out of it, her lungs. It's amazing. Amazing. So, Lin, thank you so much for your time. I hope Hamilton is in Hamburg a big success as well as in New York.
I hope so too.
And I hope you guys out there go and see Hamilton in Hamburg as well.
Moin moin!